Johnson. And Nick, thanks for that introduction. Look, before I get started, I want to set the record straight. Please sit down. I went to a Catholic high school in Delaware taught by the Norbertine priests from St. Norbert's College, a little team called Green Bay. Now, here's the deal. We were the only high school in Delaware that overwhelmingly rooted for Green Bay. Not a joke, I'll tell you why. Every single Sunday. Not only did they have great teams at the time, we still do, but not only that, my theology professor at the Catholic school I went to was a guy named Riley, last name, and he had been drafted by the Green Bay Packers, and he decided to become a priest before that, so he didn't go. But every single solitary Monday that Green Bay won, we got the last period of the day off. Now, we Catholics call that indirect bribery, but it worked. It's always great to be with one of the best governors in America, Tony Evers. Tony, I think of Tony, I mean it. I think of one word, integrity. You're a man of absolute integrity. And what I'm really doing, I'm really auditioning for a job with a little company that's going to build something out here. Thank you for the comments you made about what we're doing together. Well, look, while she couldn't be here, I want to thank one of the best U.S. senators in the United States of America, and a good friend of mine, Tammy Baldwin. I mean it. You also got a great mayor in Racine, Corey Mason. Brad Smith, President of Microsoft, thank you for your partnership, for showing how we can get things done and big things done in America. And thank you for your friendship. I really mean it. And Liz Schuller, President of LCI, thank you for all you do for the benefit of the American Union movement. I got called the most pro-union president in American history. I make no apologies for it. No. I'm serious. Middle class built America, but unions built the middle class. I've been saying that for a long time. Folks, I'm here to talk about a great comeback story in America. I'm sure you remember, Racine was once a manufacturing boomtown all the way through the 1960s. Power companies invented and manufacturing Windex, portable vacuum cleaners, and so much more, and powered by middle-class jobs. And then came trickle-down economics, cut taxes for the very wealthy and the biggest corporations, beginning in the 60s. We shipped American jobs overseas because labor was cheaper. We slashed public investment in education and innovation. And the result, we hollowed out the middle class. My predecessor and his administration doubled down on that failed trickle-down economics, along with the trial of broken promises. Look, my dad used to have an expression. He said, Joey, John, I mean this sincerely, my dad was a well-read man, never got to go to college, but he was a good man all across the board. And he'd say, Joey, remember, a job's a lot more than a paycheck. It's about your integrity. It's about your dignity. It's about being treated with respect. It's about being able to look your kid in the eye and say, honey, everything's going to be okay. In fact, 6 years ago, when my predecessor came to Racine with the promise of, quote, reclaiming our country's proud manufacturing legacy. Well, we had an infrastructure day every week for 4 years. Didn't build a damn thing. He and the administration promised a $10 billion investment by Foxconn to build a new manufacturing complex, create 13,000 new jobs. In fact, he came here with your Senator, Ron Johnson, literally holding a golden shovel promising to build the 8th wonder of the world. Are you kidding me? Look what happened. They dug a hole with those golden shovels, and then they fell into it. Look, they didn't shovel other dirt. They did shovel some dirt. 100 homes were bulldozed. They wasted hundreds of millions of dollars of your state and local tax dollars to promise a project that never happened. Foxconn turned out to be just that, a con. Go figure. In just 4 years under his administration, instead of creating 13,000 jobs in Racine, my predecessor and 1,000 manufacturing jobs, rather than creating them, 1,000 manufacturing jobs left Racine. 83,500 total jobs left Wisconsin during my predecessor's term. But that's not on my watch. We're determined to turn it around. Thus far, since we've come to office, we've created, and with the governor's overwhelming leadership, we've created over 178,000 jobs in Wisconsin, and we're going to create more here in Racine, and big time. Some of my friends on the far right have criticized my Investing in America agenda, which includes my bipartisan infrastructure law, the CHIPS and Science Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act. A lot of businesses that support it as a key to economic growth that we're seeing now. Remember here, you're going to have a recession next week, no soft landing. Well, in fact, I've asked business leaders like Brad a simple question. When the United States decides to invest considerable resources in a new industry that we need to build, does that encourage or discourage them engaging? The answer overwhelmingly is it encourages business investment. And that's what we're seeing now with our administration. My Investing in America agenda is fueling historic boom in rebuilding our roads and bridges, developing and deploying clean energy, revitalizing American manufacturing, and so much more. So far, we've created $866 billion in private sector investment nationwide, almost $1 trillion. Historic amounts in such a short time. Now, it's literally creating hundreds of thousands of jobs, building new semiconductor factories, electric vehicles and battery factories, and so much more, all here in America. Today, it's another example of the private sector optimism. Microsoft, as the President already pointed out, is investing $3.3 billion to build a new data center here in Racine. That's going to help operate one of the most powerful artificial intelligence systems in the world, and I've gone around the world, literally, not figuratively, meeting with the leading architects of AI. It's going to result in 2,300 union construction jobs just to build a new facility. And 2,000 permanent workers to work in the data centers. In addition, we're also providing a pipeline to train these new jobs. A pipeline that starts right here at this very spot. Microsoft is partnering with Gateway Technical Community College right here to train and certify 200 students a year to fill high-demand, good-paying jobs in data and IT at Microsoft's new AI Data Center here in Racine. But that's not all. In addition, Microsoft is continuing a pipeline going to high schools in nearby Mount Pleasant to train high school students for jobs of the future. As the boss pointed out, it's going to create 100,000 jobs over time. It's all part of Microsoft's broad plan to build an artificial intelligence ecosystem right here in Racine. And it's going to be transformative, not just here, but worldwide. It's not only significant investment in infrastructure in Racine, but for the people of Racine. It means folks are getting trained. Folks are getting trained in new, high-paying, high-skilled jobs that don't require a four-year college degree and don't require you to leave home. You know, where I come from, that really matters. I know what it's like when your parents have to move the family in search of work because there's no jobs. What it does to the family's dignity. My wife, Jill, who teaches full-time at a community college, cares a lot about this as well. Last year, she announced our first 5 workforce hub sites to build a pipeline of workers and industries that create the new hometowns that are creating new towns in Phoenix, Baltimore, Columbus, Ohio, Augusta, Georgia, building everything from semiconductors to electric vehicles. Last month, I announced 4 new hubs to continue to train workers for the jobs of the future, one of which is in Milwaukee, that trains workers to help replace every poisonous lead pipe in America in a decade and funded by the infrastructure law. And by the way, Buy America has been the law of the land since the 30s, but it's been ignored by most administration. Past administrations, including my predecessor, failed to buy America. Not anymore. Here's how it works. When the Congress sends something to the President to build something, whether it's a road, a highway, a deck of an aircraft carrier, whatever it is, that President, back from the law that was passed in the 30s, is supposed to hire American workers to build it and use American products. Well, on my watch and Tammy's leadership, federal projects like the Bluntnick Bridge here in Wisconsin, it's going to cost $1 billion. But it's all American made, all American products, and all American workers, and it's going to create 10,000 new jobs. 10,000. In addition to roads and highways and so much more, will be made with American products, built by American workers, creating good-paying American jobs. What's happening in Racine is really important for another reason. We'll see more technical community colleges, technical changes needed in the next 10 years than we saw in the last 50. AI is already driving that change in every part of American life, from how we teach and learn to how we solve the biggest challenges, from curing cancer to climate change. America is a global leader in AI, and American companies lead the world in AI innovation and a lot of what we're going to see here in Racine. Because of our initiatives, American workers will power that innovation here in America. But look, to get the full benefit of all these safeguards, we need safeguards. That's why, as the President pointed out, I signed the landmark executive order on which the most significant action any government has taken anywhere in the world has ever taken for AI safety, security, and trust. This order helps make sure workers have a seat at the table in determining how these technologies are developed and used. For real. And we'll support workers in every industry by defending the right to a fair wage to organize as these technologies emerge across the board, and they're going to happen. Folks, during the previous administration, my predecessor made promises which he broke more than kept, left a lot of people behind in communities like Racine. On my watch, we make promises and we keep promises. And we leave no one behind. Since I took office, we've added nearly 4,000 jobs in Racine. As I said earlier, we've added 178,000 in the state of Wisconsin. The unemployment rate has hit a record low in Racine. Racine has seen some of the strongest new business growth in all of Wisconsin. And it's only just beginning. We're seeing a great American comeback story all across Wisconsin, and quite frankly, the entire country. The bottom line is, we're doing what's always worked in this country, giving people a fair shot, leaving nobody behind, and grow the economy in the middle out and the bottom up, not the top down. When that happens, everybody does well. Everybody does well. Let me close with this. When folks see a new factory being built here in Wisconsin, people going to work making a really good wage in their hometowns, I hope they feel the pride that I feel. Pride in their hometowns making a comeback. Pride in knowing we can get big things done in America still. And folks, I've never been more optimistic, and I've only been around a couple years, I know. I know I don't look it, but I'm on 40 plus 2 types. Wait a minute. But I've never been more, I swear to God, I've never been more optimistic about our future. We just have to remember who and else we are. We're the United States of America, and there's nothing beyond our capacity when we work together. Nothing. I mean that. Nothing. The rest of the world looks to us. So keep it going. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Don't jump.
all deliberate care to make sure that we get everything in it absolutely correct, and it will be just a brief delay.
It will be what?
Just a brief delay.
A brief delay. Okay, so definitely this week, before the weekend.
I'm not gonna say, I'm not gonna put a timetable on, but a brief delay in the coming days.
And then last one, which is probably a little bit broader, but I'll let other people pick up on it, is Rafah. So your understanding of the current situation and how that relates to the pause in these arms shipments.
So when you mean the current situation, you mean with respect to Israel?
What your understanding of what Israel intends to do.
So I will let Israel speak for what they intend to do. You've obviously seen them conduct a limited operation with respect to the Rafah crossing in the past few days. You've also seen them order the evacuation of people. They have not yet launched a full-scale military operation, and I will let them speak to any plans that they might have. I will say on our behalf, we continue to have concerns about a potential Rafah operation. We have made that quite clear. We've made it clear with the Israeli government privately, and of course, everyone from the president on down has made that clear publicly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you have these concerns, and then there's the halt in this shipment. So what's the message from that? Is it the idea that this will make it more difficult operationally for Israel to do this, or is it more of a political statement? Why this, and how does it directly affect the Rafah operation?
So let me say a few things about that. Number one, people should be absolutely clear that we are committed to Israel's security. We are committed to the defense of Israel. We have demonstrated that in recent weeks with our participation in Israel's defense when it came under attack from Iran. But as we have made clear, and I just did a moment ago, we have very serious concerns about a potential Rafah operation. We have concerns about what that would mean for the civilian population there when you look at the fact that there are so many people crowded into such a small area, when you look at the way Israel has conducted its operations in the past and what the impact on the civilian population has been. And we also have concerns about the impact of any potential operation on the delivery of humanitarian assistance. So we have paused one shipment of near-term assistance, and we are reviewing others. But that said, our long-term commitment to Israel's security has not changed.
Sure. I mean, expanding on that, I mean, if I understand right, it's a pause. It's not that this has been completely ended. I mean, it's a halt in the shipment of these. I mean, is there a timeline for when that? Are you waiting to see what happens in Rafah before making a decision? Is there a timeline?
I don't have a time frame to offer you, but we have always made clear that our policy determinations are dependent on Israel's policy determinations.
And just one more thing. I mean, as you know, they already do have these bombs in their arsenal. It's not these would be the first ones. Is there a message to communicate to the Israelis that they should not be using these weapons in Rafah or elsewhere?
I'm not going to speak to anything beyond the current pause of assistance. The one shipment that we have currently paused in the review of others. I'm not going to speak to any further long-term implications. I think the most important long-term implication is the one I said, which is that we do remain committed to Israel's security. We remain committed to Israel's defense. But in the context of the unfolding situation in Rafah, it is a place where we have very serious concerns, and that's why we take the actions we take. Yeah.
Just to follow up on that, what exactly are you asking Israel to do in order for this pause to be lifted?
I am not going to get into our internal conversations with the government of Israel. I will say, however, we have been pretty clear about what we want to see when it comes to an operation in Rafah, and that's what we don't want to see one go forward. We do not believe Israel has presented a credible humanitarian plan that would account for both the potential harm to civilian life of an operation in such a crowded area, or for properly evacuating and caring for the over 1 million people who are there. We just don't believe it's possible to move those people to other places inside Gaza, and we have not seen a plan to take care of them if they were moved to other places. And so that's what we have made clear, is that we don't support such an operation.
And if they continue on with these limited incursions, like we're seeing, happen at this moment, do you expect there will be further pauses?
I'm just not going to speak to what actions we might take in the future. We make these assessments day by day based on what is happening on the ground and make our appropriate policy determinations based on those facts.
Just to dive in a bit, you mentioned looking at the way Israel has conducted operations in the past, that is weighing on this decision to pause now. So what is it in the way Israel has been operating in Gaza that means you don't think it's right to provide 2,000-pound bombs.
So what I was referring to when I said we don't want to see an operation go forward in Rafah because of the impact that we have seen in previous parts of the campaign is go back to something the Secretary has said a number of times when he's been in the region, and that is intent is one thing, results are another. And we have seen Israel take important steps to improve deconfliction, to improve coordination, to try and limit the impact on the civilian population. But the results still have been far too many innocent civilians dying. And so when you take those results that we have seen over the course of the campaign, and then you transpose them over a landscape in Rafah where you have more than 1 million people in such a tight area, people who have moved from Gaza City, who have moved from Khan Yunis, who have moved from other parts of Gaza and all crowded into Rafah, all of those concerns that we had previously are magnified when you think about how they would operate in such a dense area. There's also an additional concern that we've made clear, which is that the Rafah area is the center for the distribution of humanitarian assistance, most of the distribution of humanitarian assistance in Gaza, both because that's where the civilian population is, because that's where they've moved, and also because that's where the two principal crossings that have been open for months now also exist. And so there is no way to replace the delivery of humanitarian assistance through Rafah and Kerem Shalom, and then the network that has been set up inside Gaza, headquartered in Rafah, that would be severely disrupted, severely jeopardized by kinetic action.
But just specifically on the impact in terms of bombing, because what you've held back is these 2,000-pound bombs. Does that mean? I mean, the president has talked about indiscriminate bombing in that campaign, but is there some kind of assessment that U.S. weapons have been used in an indiscriminate way, in a way that's caught up more civilians than were necessary?
So that is not a conclusion that we have drawn when it comes to making this kind of legal assessment, I think, to which you're referring, when it comes to ongoing assessments that we have that relate to violations or potential violations of international humanitarian law. We are looking at those questions. We've been doing so for some time, and those processes remain ongoing. The NSM, of course, will interact with these questions in some very real ways. But that said, even aside from those questions of compliance with international humanitarian law, when you see the results of the campaign to date, you've seen too many Palestinians die. And so when you look at those results, and you, as I said a minute ago, and you try to imagine a repeat of such a campaign in an even more dense area than where Israel has operated to date, that's why we have such great concerns.
Right. I guess I'm just trying to understand how, in the conflict up till now, you haven't made that conclusion, but you're able to say for Rafah, this is just beyond what we're willing to see our bombs.
We have been clear for some time that the results were not acceptable. You've heard the Secretary speak to this a number of times when he's been in the region. I think it was on a trip last December when he talked about steps that they briefed us on that they were taking to improve civilian protections. And he said, look, the intent seems to be there, but we're going to judge them on the results. And the results that we saw in the months unfolded after that, including in the campaign in Khan Yunis, was still far too much loss of civilian life. I think we've spoken to that a number of times. And so the thing that is different in Rafah, different's not quite the right word, but the thing that heightens the concern in Rafah is you have so many more people in such a dense area. And so all of the concerns that we had previously are magnified when you look at the impact of all the people that have moved into such a dense area, as well as the humanitarian assistance concerns that I've been detailing.
And just finally, I wonder if you can just be clear, there are these larger bombs that have been held back. There's also reporting about JDAMs that were included, and these are kind of tail kits to help target bombs. Are you also holding them back related to?
I am not going to speak to specific weapon systems. I will say we have held or paused one shipment. I'll let the Pentagon speak to that, because once you get into the realm of actually shipping weapons, that is a Pentagon function, not ours. But then we are reviewing other potential weapon systems, and I'm not going to get into the underlying details. Tom?
Do you have any update on operations at the Rafah crossing?
I don't. So let me speak kind of beyond Rafah and talk about what we've seen with respect to humanitarian assistance today, if that's okay. That's a good question. You didn't answer, but you didn't ask, but it's related. So Kerem Shalom opened today, open for the delivery of humanitarian assistance, but at least as the last update I got before I came out here, we didn't actually see humanitarian assistance move through Kerem Shalom because of logistical and security concerns on the ground. And that also relates somewhat to Rafah crossing, because what didn't happen today is fuel going in through Rafah crossing. And so we think it's critical that Rafah be open for fuel, because without fuel deliveries into Rafah, humanitarian assistance that comes in through Kerem Shalom can actually be delivered. The two are critically linked, so it's why we've pressed to have not just Kerem Shalom open, but Rafah opened. Didn't open today, didn't open for fuel today. We're going to continue to push for that to happen.
Okay, but so you just said you haven't seen movement from Kerem Shalom on the Gaza side.
Correct. We didn't. So we saw Kerem Shalom open today, actually
Israeli
open for
side,
deliveries,
yeah.
but then trucks didn't move in because of some of these logistical and security concerns.
Okay, so but I mean, basically, you're back to a situation that you were in the first weeks of the war, where you've got nothing open apart from Erez, where there's not much happening at all. It seems, according to aid groups. That seems very significant. And on Rafah, I mean, you've called it a limited operation, but the Israelis are occupying the Palestinian side of the Rafah crossing. I mean, that's quite a big move on the ground. And so I wonder what you see as the future for both, aid supplies getting in, Palestinians who desperately need hospital treatment getting out. We've heard this morning in a briefing from some NGOs saying they can't rotate their teams, they're stuck, the ones in Gaza, they can't get out, they can't get humanitarian workers in, they don't have Israeli visas. So this is now potentially a very big problem. And it was a signature achievement of the president after a couple of weeks, he said, or you've been saying, to get Rafah open. You're now all the way back 7 months of what you had then.
So let me speak to the first one, and then I'll come back and address the second. And if I've forgotten to address some of the aspects of it, I would appreciate a follow-up. So when it comes to the level of humanitarian assistance, the results as they are today are just unacceptable. There's no other way to put it. Something that the president made clear on the call that he had with Prime Minister Netanyahu on April 4th is that there needed to be a dramatic change in the delivery of humanitarian assistance into Gaza. And in the wake of that phone call, we saw Israel take steps to improve the delivery of humanitarian assistance. One of those was the opening of Erez Crossing, which does remain open. One of them was the opening of Ashdod for deliveries through Ashdod that would then go in through Erez, and there are other steps as well that we've detailed a number of times in this briefing. When the secretary was in the region last week, one of the messages you heard him deliver over and over and over is that it was critical not just that the increase in humanitarian assistance continue, but that it be sustained. That the dips in delivery of humanitarian assistance that we have seen at previous stages of this conflict could not be repeated, that those dips would be unacceptable. Now, this week we have seen a fairly dramatic dip in the increase of humanitarian assistance. And so we are making quite clear to the government of Israel that we need to see those decreases reversed. We need to get back to where we were, and we need to see the levels continue to increase and see those sustained, and that is why we need to see Kerem Shalom and Rafah opened. To Rafah specifically, on your question about Rafah. Rafah is absolutely critical for the delivery of, as I said, fuel into Gaza. There's a fuel depot that exists right at the Rafah terminal, I think on the Gaza side of the crossing. And it has also been the primary entry and exit point, as you said in your question, for humanitarian aid workers to get in and out of Gaza and do the important work that they need to do, that we want them to continue to do. So it's absolutely critical that that crossing open, that it remain open, and we're going to continue to press for that. I think I might have left out one aspect of the question.
I mean,
so
how sustainable is it to have Israeli control on the Palestinian side of Rafah
Yeah,
crossing with all of the problems that potentially brings? What's your, first of all, assessment to how feasible and sustainable that is, and do you have an alternative policy you're going to put to the Israelis on that?
So I don't have an assessment to offer of the short or long-term sustainability. I will say our position on what ought to happen to Rafah crossing and control of the Rafah side of the crossing has been quite clear for some time, and that's that we want the Palestinian Authority united in Gaza and the West Bank to ultimately assume governance in the West Bank. That's where we want to get to, and of course that would include governance of the Rafah crossing, because they would be the controlling government authority. Now, what happens in the time between now and then ultimately is a question for Israel. Israel has seized that crossing, and Israel is in control of it now. So it is Israel, the responsibility to open that crossing and make sure that it is running effectively right now is a responsibility of the government of Israel, which is why we have made clear to them that they need to open the crossing as soon as possible and make sure that aid deliveries can come in, make sure that humanitarian aid workers can come in and come out, and make sure that the delivery of humanitarian assistance isn't further impeded. Said.
Thank you. Just to follow up on what Tom and Matt raised. On Rafah, let me ask you a straightforward question. You think the incursion happened with U.S. okay or with total defiance? I'm talking about the Israeli of the United States position.
It did not happen with our approval.
It did not happen with your approval?
No.
Okay. All right. So let me ask you about this then. I mean, you mentioned that aid workers can only go through Rafah. Would the United States ask Israel to allow aid workers to go through the other points of entry?
So I don't want to get into what steps we might take, what further steps we might take. The first priority is to get Rafah open, period. And then we'll take other questions day by day.
Okay, so do you expect that the Rafah crossing will be open anytime soon?
One of the lessons I have learned in the course of this conflict over the past 7 months is not to make predictions about what's going to happen on the ground, especially when it pertains to these crossings. I will just say that we have made clear that we want to see it open, and we'll continue to push for that.
On the NSM 20 issue, Tim Reiser, who basically wrote the Leahy statute way back, said that Israel has violated the Leahy law consistently, always. Now, you guys say here that Israel did not get preferential treatment and so on, but according to the author of this document, Israel has always done that. Do you have any comment on that?
There are all sorts of people outside of government who have drawn various conclusions one way or the other, and you see them offering those opinions in the press, as is their right to do all the time. I can tell you that is not a conclusion that we have reached.
Okay, but that's the guy that wrote the book, right?
He is, and and I will just tell you, on behalf of the United States government, we have not reached that conclusion.
Let me ask you about something the president said yesterday. He said that Hamas is motivated by the ancient desire to eliminate the Jews. Is that the thinking in this building, that Hamas is only motivated by ancient desire to eliminate the Jews?
Is that the thinking in this building? That is what Hamas has said. Hamas has come out and publicly said that they want to eliminate. Hold on,
contextually, that is wrong, Matt, because Hamas came into being in 1987 in the midst of an intifada against the occupation, responding to a brutal Israeli attack on Gaza. So when we say ancient desires, I mean that's going back 2,000 years.
I think you are ignoring the repeated over years and years of anti-Semitic statements by Hamas saying that they are committed to the destruction of the state of Israel and committed to the death of the Israeli people. I don't think that's a very controversial statement. That is well documented. And hold on. Let me finish. Hamas has been quite clear what their goals are when it comes to the Israeli people, and that is the total elimination of the Israeli people. We have seen them say they wanted to repeat the attacks of October 7th again and again and again. So yes, the president was absolutely right in his comments.
He was absolutely right that they are motivated by ancient desires?
That is what they have made that clear a number of times.
Thank you, Matt. There is reports that Israel is using white phosphorus in Rafah. Do you have any confirmation?
I have not seen those reports. I'm happy to look into it.
Will you take it? Will you look into it?
Yeah, that's what I said. I'll take it and look into it.
And yesterday you said that this operation is limited, and you're still hoping that Israel is not going to go with the bigger operation. But what difference does it make when they evacuate 100,000, and yesterday there is videos of them attacking tents that has refugees, including kids. I think there's like tens of kids who were being killed yesterday. So in the end, I mean, the results are the same.
So let me just differentiate two things. When we spoke about it being a limited operation, when I spoke about it here, I was speaking specifically to they're taking control of the Rafah crossing. When it comes to the evacuation of 100,000 people, we made clear that we don't want to see that happen. We don't think that there is sufficient place for those people to go. We think that an evacuation order of 100,000 people will actually lead to more people moving and going to places where there is not sufficient care for them. So no, that is not something we support.
Okay. And finally, what message does the State Department send to people who really truly believe in the respect of international law, of the Geneva Convention? When you have lawmakers in the U.S. are threatening the ICC judges of basically sanctions if they indict Netanyahu. When you have an important report to look into whether Israel is misusing U.S. weapons against civilians is being delayed. When there is a unit in the U.S. Army, in the Israeli army, that's being accused of gross human rights violation in the West Bank has been pushed aside. So, and also there is a statistic, 56% of the Democrats, which is the party of the secretary and the president, saying they believe that Israel committed genocide. So what message would you send to the equally people who believe in democracy and rogue state who just trample all over these principles?
So a number of things there. Number one, we don't make our decisions based on polls. We make our decisions based on the facts, and that's what we will continue to do to make decisions in the best interests of the American people. When it comes to members of Congress, they make their own decisions. They speak for themselves. They don't speak for the State Department or the United States government. That has always been the case. They're independent actors. When it comes to the NSM, I don't think you should take a delay of a few days to speak at all to our commitment to compliance with international humanitarian law or to writing a thorough report that will look into all of these questions. We are committed to doing it, and I think it is a bit. I think it's a bit silly to suggest that a very short delay in any way undermines that commitment. That's it. I know. I'm going through the examples one by one. But that said, our overall message is that we are absolutely committed to the upholding of international humanitarian law. We have made that clear. That is the case when it comes to Israel. Is the case when it comes to every country anywhere in the world. We expect every country to comply with international humanitarian law. And we have ongoing processes inside this building to look at those very questions when it comes to Israel's conduct during this war.
On the
Yeah.
ICC part of her question, forget about members of Congress for the moment, but you know the last administration actually did impose sanctions on the ICC prosecutor and a bunch of others. And when you guys came in, when this administration came in, you made quite a big deal out of rescinding that. Can you rule out that a change in that, and that you might go back to what the previous administration had done in terms of the ICC with if they go ahead with this with indictments of Israeli officials?
I can't make any predictions or any announcements one way or the other about what we will do about something that has not yet happened. I'll just make clear that we do not believe the ICC has jurisdiction in this matter, and we're opposed to their investigation.
Yeah, but I mean, is this administration willing to consider reversing its reversal of the Trump administration's sanctions on the ICC?
So again, the ICC hasn't made a decision yet, and
I know I'm aware of that, but
right,
I mean,
but
is
you're
this
asking
something you're willing to consider?
You're asking me to forecast what we might do, or hold on, or what we might consider if and when they make that decision, which they haven't made. I'm never willing to do.
I'm only
I
asking
shouldn't say
whether
never,
you're going to rule it out.
I'm just
I mean,
not.
it would seem to be a big backtrack if you guys went in and then reversed your reversal of what Secretary Pompeo did with the ICC.
I am just not going to make any forecasts one way or the other. We're going to wait and see what the ICC does and make our decisions based on that.
The Minister of Defense of Israel was this morning at the border between Lebanon and Israel, and he said that it's going to be a very hot summer. Do you have fear that this war could expand wiser, and like what we see in Rafah, it could be also another attack inside Lebanon this time?
We have always been clear from the initial days of this conflict that we were worried about the escalation of the conflict. We were worried about the spread of the conflict, and that's why we have worked so hard to keep it from escalating and keep it from spreading, and that includes through diplomatic efforts to try to bring calm to northern Israel and the border with Lebanon. Those efforts continue, and it's something that we focus on every day while we're dealing with all of the very serious issues in Gaza. We remain committed to doing everything we can to keep the conflict from expanding, and there's ongoing diplomatic efforts to that end.
Also, like I did go examine the protest that is going on the campus. We did not feel that it was anti-Semitic speeches. They're asking for a ceasefire. They're asking for humanitarian aid. They're asking to stop the war. They're asking not to attack civilians. They're asking to end the genocide. So why President Biden said, "Oh, we will not allow these protests to keep on going," while they're asking for human things, that this administration has been always a big advocate for human rights and democracy, and now we see that this democracy has been oppressed on college campuses. The whole world is kind of like watching America is going down in democracy like this, especially comes when
I would completely disagree with that assessment of the state of American democracy. Let me say, first of all, I would largely defer to the White House to speak to that, only because it's largely a domestic matter, and as I think you know, here at the State Department, we usually speak to international and diplomatic matters, not concerns that happen here in the United States. That said, the President has made clear, the Secretary has made clear when he's spoken on this issue, that we are absolutely committed to Americans' right to free speech. It is one of the things that makes our country great, but at the same time, other students have the right to go to class, to go to school, and those rights shouldn't be impeded either. And beyond that, I will, as I said, refer to more domestic sides of our government to speak in any detail. Go ahead, Alex.
Thank you, Matt. A couple of separate topics. On detained American citizens in Russia, I was hoping you could help us with the numbers here, because White House yesterday confirmed 2 cases. We were aware of another case back in April, and that's on top of 3 other cases, Paul, also, and Evan. How many cases actively you guys are considering right now? How many of them are deemed to be wrongful? And you're seeking actively access to them?
Let me go back and get you a kind of full accounting for that. There are obviously the 2 cases that we have announced as wrongfully detained, Paul Whelan and Evan Gershkovich. There are other Americans who are detained, people whose release that we have called for. And then there are other Americans who have been detained for any number of various alleged issues, and those are sometimes in a slightly different category. So I don't want to be misleading. Let me take it back and get you an actual answer.
What's your sense of why this is increasing these days? Are they seeking some prisoner swamp? That's why they are.
So we have been quite clear that Russia has detained Americans for not legitimate law enforcement reasons, but because it wants to hold them essentially as hostage and trade them for potential prisoners. It's one of the reasons, if you look at the D indicators on our travel warning, it is one of the reasons why we have been so crystal clear that Americans should not, for any reason, travel to Russia, period.
Thank you. On Ukraine, in light of last night's attacks, I'm wondering if it's going to trigger any change on your end in terms of, expediting your support.
I don't have any announcements to make. Well, obviously, the Congress just passed a new supplemental. We have already provided announced more than $1 billion in assistance from that supplemental. We are working on other packages. I think you can expect to see us get back to the kind of tempo that we were at before we had this break in funding. So you should expect to see additional funding coming, but I'm not going to give you a timetable today about when we will make such an announcement.
I have one more on Georgia, if I may.
Yeah.
There's an increasing rhetoric, anti-Western rhetoric coming from Georgian Dream officials. Today they announced one more project, so Kremlin-inspired, if you want, incriminating database on opponents without, providing any due process, how they're going to list, those critics. What is your take on, where is this coming from?
I don't have any assessment on that particular thing. I will just say that, as we have said, in the past few days, we remain incredibly concerned, not just about the legislation that is under consideration in the Georgian legislature, but also the anti-Western rhetoric we have seen out of Georgia Dream's leadership. We think that puts Georgia on a precarious trajectory. We think it jeopardizes their Euro-Atlantic path, and it quite obviously jeopardizes the relationship between our 2 countries.
Do you find it positive that everything we hear from Georgian Dream officials are, if you want, a reflection of everything we read from the Sputnik or other Russian
I just don't have any further comment than what I just said. Janie, go ahead.
Thank you, Matt. 2 questions on Russia and North Korea. It was reported that the Russians attempted to assassinate Ukraine President Zelensky with missiles. Is there anything specific about this?
I spoke to this yesterday. I don't have anything further to add to those comments.
You couldn't find it yet.
I don't have anything further to add. I will defer largely to the Ukrainian government to speak to the details of that plot.
Okay, another one. A UN investigation team recently announced that North Korea made a missile used by Russia against Ukraine contained the U.S. and the European components. What is the U.S.'s reactions on this?
Let me take back and get you an answer to that. Sean, go ahead.
different topic.
Yeah.
Hong Kong. I don't know if you have any comment on this. The authorities in Hong Kong, they've banned the song that's sort of the anthem of the democracy movement, Glory to Hong Kong. And,
Yeah.
and today they said that they're trying to get all online platforms, including Google, to take it down. Does the U.S. have any comment on that? And has it been in communication with tech firms on what to do?
So we remain seriously concerned about the continued erosion of protections for human rights and fundamental freedoms in Hong Kong, including the freedom of expression. And the decision to ban this song is the latest blow to the international reputation of a city that previously prided itself on having an independent judiciary, protecting the free exchange of information, ideas, and goods. I don't have any specific conversations to read out.
How about on the online aspect, like trying to get them to take it down from online?
I mean, I would say that it goes to my comments about being concerned about the continued erosions of protection, including freedom of expression, and that would include to trying to erase a song from the internet.
Direct follow-up on Hong Kong? Direct follow-up?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sticking with Hong Kong, as we speak, as we sit here, pro-democracy advocate Jimmy Lai remains on trial. In fact, tonight in California, there's going to be a prayer service held for him. But in December, this State Department condemned his persecution, demanded his immediate release. It's now May. We're 72 days into his trial, I believe. Have you received any response from the authorities there after demanding his release?
I'm not going to speak to specific responses, but we have made clear for some time, as you said, that we want to see his release, and that remains the case.
How closely are you monitoring that trial?
Incredibly closely. I can tell you there are people here in the State Department that are following that every day.
And then finally, there's an effort, you may know, by lawmakers right now, U.S. lawmakers, to rename a street after Jimmy Lai, where the